So again, last year when we got all the themes for this year, we were like, pain. What a very festive theme to be talking about when we're also talking about cheer, end of year celebrations, milestones. But I mean, pain is also a very real thing that we think about going into the holidays as well. There's so many different ways that we can interpret the theme of pain. Ain't no gain without pain, the pleasure of pain. There's so many different ways that we can interpret that, but when we were thinking about it, we were thinking about in the terms of tenacity, and we wanted to bring somebody who I think is the perfect person to talk about pain, none other than Louis Parkinson.
Okay.
Yeah?
Hi, everyone. Oh, thank you. All right, we're off. Hi, everybody. My name's Louis. I'm a professional rock climber and coach. And I wasn't sure at first what to talk about for this topic. And then the more I thought about it, the more I was, my job is quite painful a lot of the time. I fall off a lot. It can be physically painful. It can be embarrassing and frustrating, so it can be emotionally or socially painful as well. And generally what I want to talk about today was the idea that learning things is often painful. So I'm going to do a quick bit of audience participation. Everyone stand up. I know, I'm sorry. Everyone stand up. Okay. So, if you have never hurt yourself, even slightly, trying to learn something new, have a sit down. Okay, cool. Well, that's good news. And if you've never gotten frustrated trying to learn something, sit down. Oh, okay. And if you've never felt embarrassed trying to learn something new in front of other people, you can also sit down. Oh, great. Okay, everyone's still standing. There will be useful stuff in this talk then. Okay, now everyone can sit down. Just in case everyone's like, no, I already know all this stuff already, they wouldn't need to come to this talk. But good, okay, I think I'll have some useful stuff. So I'm going to try this clicker to see if this works. I'm just going to show a quick video to show the sort of thing I get up to on a regular basis. It's working. Is it working? Do I need to press it again? Oh. That actually makes me look really bad at my job. But generally what you see is me falling off a lot, and maybe you can see I'm often smiling at the same time. I've taught myself over a lot of time, I've climbed for about 20 years now, that, learning stuff is inherently painful a lot of the time in a variety of different ways, and choosing to be really optimistic and intentionally persistent is an easy way to get past some of those barriers. So I was going to talk about a few specific examples of times when I found learning something to be physically painful, or to be emotionally painful, or to be socially painful, and just talk a little bit about what I've learned to do in response to those things, and hopefully there'll be some things that you can apply in your life otherwise. Some people were talking about this before I started. Who's seen the film Free Solo, or heard of the film Free Solo? Oh, okay, a lot of people. Okay, so slight head start that some people know a little bit about climbing. The type of climbing that I do is a little bit strange, so I just want to explain it a little bit. I'm into a discipline called bouldering. Does anyone know what that is? Okay, a few people. Oh, great. Okay, so initially, the only type of climbing anyone did was climbing up mountains. When they wanted to get better at practicing specific hard moves and particularly powerful sequences that they'd come across on mountains, they had the idea of, what if we practice on small boulders on the valley floor? We can fall off, land on the ground, and then try it again immediately. This would be a really, really good way of practicing. That's then slowly evolved to become its own discipline of climbing, and now that's basically all I do. I just do this discipline of climbing where we aim to climb short distances above the ground, and because we don't need to use ropes, we can just fall down, land on a padded mat, and try it again. It means we can focus on really, really difficult movements because we can try them again and again and again. But the actual practice of that means that the failure rate is really, really, really high. If I want to complete a particularly difficult climb, I often go into it expecting that it might take me hours and hours and hours of falling off it again and again and again and again, and slowly learning the subtleties that I need to eventually complete it. So I started climbing when I was 13. I first went for my little sister's birthday. She was there with all her friends. I went there because I thought it sounded fun. She was great at it. She had been a ballet dancer since she was 3, naturally really, really skilled at it, but could not be less interested. I really, really liked it, but I was very bad at it. My very first climbing experience was I got to the top of the wall, which sounds good, but I did a really, really easy one, and then I didn't know how to get down. And I found it really scary, and I ended up crying in front of all my little sister's friends, and the instructor had to come and rescue me. So not the best start, but I did enjoy some parts of it, so I carried on going. I persistently stuck with it for years. I ended up on the national team competing at the World Cups in 2020. And then since then, I've become a coach. I teach other people to compete at the World Cups. I teach beginners, I teach advanced people, and I also do a fair bit of just YouTube creation. And generally, yeah, aside from going through this whole experience of learning to deal with failure myself, I now teach other people to do the same thing. Let me just check that I've done everything I wanted to here. Yep, I've explained that I started when I was 13 and that I was bad, and now I'm less bad. Great. Okay, let's go through the first example of how often learning things can be physically painful. I'm hoping if I click the button, it will work. This is actually a clip that popped up in that first reel that I showed. This is me trying a discipline of climbing different to what I described. This is not bouldering, this is trad climbing. That means you climb up and fix in bits of protection as you go. And sometimes, if you fall, it can be quite scary and painful, which I think we're going to see here. So, yeah, being honest, that hurt quite a lot. It could have gone worse. Luckily, the person who's holding the other end of the rope, it maybe looks like he makes a mistake there, and I shouldn't have fallen so far. He's actually incredibly experienced, and he makes a really good catch. I was going to make a Louis-shaped hole in the ground, and he managed to save me at the last minute. But despite that, yeah, I flipped upside down. Already, I find this style of climbing not really in my comfort zone, so I was already quite scared. That fall was very scary, and I then cut my arm a little bit. But what I find interesting is watching this back. Yeah, you can see it in the captions at the side. Immediate response that I had was, okay, yeah, ow. But exciting news, I now know that this is the worst thing that can happen. Even though, yep, it was scary and I hurt myself slightly, I now know what the absolute worst thing that could be what the absolute worst thing that can happen might be, and I survived. And yeah, it hurt a little bit, but I also learned, as I'm talking about here, that yeah, my foot slipped, but as it was slipping, I understood how to do that move. I actually, a result of this fall, you might not expect it, but I actually felt loads more confident. I waited for about 20 minutes. I waited for my arm to stop hurting a bit, and then I managed to get on and do it first go, which was really, really exciting. Actually, all the more rewarding for having taken that fall on the climb. So I was using this as an example of, yep, sometimes it's painful, but sometimes that also means you learn what the maximum you might get hurt might be, and that you can survive it and carry on learning anyway. Okay, I'm going to get onto the next one. This one would be my demonstration of how learning things can be emotionally painful. So, context on the next video. I've been trying a climb which is way at my physical limit, which means that it's already taken me several days to learn how to do the moves, to learn all the subtleties. I've slowly fallen off it at higher and higher points, learned more as I went. But it's also a difficulty of climb, which means I feel like I'm only going to be able to do it once. It takes all of my strength. It's, yeah, physically and mentally difficult. So, okay, here is the video of me trying this very hard climb. This is my style of climbing. This is the stuff that I am more in my comfort zone doing. Sorry, that was loud. So, okay, you can tell at the point in that video I was absolutely crushed. I think someone asked me recently, oh, what's the most frustrated time you've ever felt? And it's that. That is the most frustrated I've ever been. You can see right after I fall off, I yell, actually not with pain at all. I did miss all of the pads and landed on these tree roots down here, but didn't mind that at all. What I was angry about was, that was the go. That was this perfect moment where I did everything right, and actually every time I watch that video, I'm convinced it's the wrong one, because I'm done. I finished the whole thing. I'm at literally the last millisecond of what I needed to do to finish the climb. All I needed to do to officially finish it was stand up and celebrate, and instead I slipped and slid off the whole thing. So, yeah, blind with frustration for a good 5 minutes or so. I think the people who were with me didn't really want to ask me how I was doing, because they thought they might get yelled at. Yeah, I really didn't think I was going to be able to do it again, and that's why I felt so frustrated about it. So, sat there for a little while, had a little bit of a cry, and then managed to quickly turn it around to, okay, yeah, it is really frustrating, but it's also kind of funny. So I tried to laugh about it, and then after a little bit, I was like, okay, now I see the funny side of it. Yes, that was kind of fun to slip all the way off the top of it. Actually, now I know, again, like with that previous one, I know I could fall all the way off the top, miss all of the pads, and apparently be uninjured. And if I'm looking for proof that maybe I am able to do this hard climb, there can't be clearer proof than what I just did, which is I did the whole climb. I've just proven I am able to do it. So it took me a while to calm down and to get my strength back, but about half an hour later, with a lot of pressure because it was starting to rain, which makes it a lot harder, I got back on and managed to do it on my next go just. And again, the experience was a little bit more exciting and rewarding because I'd had this whole moment on it. Okay, I'll go on to the very last one, which is learning being socially painful. So aside from climbing indoors, where I do my coaching, and climbing outdoors, where I will often hurt myself, apparently, I also have been competing for a long time. Like I said, I did the World Cups in 2020, and I still compete at the British Championships every year. I'd like to win, but I don't think I'm going to win. I mostly just do it for fun nowadays. But that being said, although I go into it with this attitude of, oh, I just want to have fun, I just want to enjoy myself, I often really, really struggle to enjoy competitions at a high level because I struggle with my own expectations of myself, and I struggle with what feels like everyone else's expectations of me. I'm supposed to be a relatively good climber. I used to be on the GB team, and that means when I go to a competition, I feel like if I don't do really, really well, I'm then letting down people who are watching, I'm letting down my own expectations. So the other frustrating was I know that I could do really well. If I just climbed, as I often do when I'm in practice, I could perform brilliantly, I could actually get a good result in the competition, and instead I find myself doing this sort of thing a lot in competitions. Oh, we get sad music. So, okay, it might look like I'm doing okay, but in my head I was thinking about going, that climb that I was just trying is very much something that suits me, it's quite powerful, it's the sort of climbing that I like, and knowing that I could perform well on it, and instead finding myself slipping around and fumbling the holds and falling off over and over again was frustrating for me, because I knew I could do the climb, and it made me feel like an idiot, because there's a lot of people watching, there's cameras, and it's being live streamed. What I would love is for my performance to meet my expectations, and I climb really, really well, and I feel as I normally do in practice, and instead having the result of fumbling around and flailing on things, yeah, feels embarrassing. So I've had a difficult relationship with competitions, because I know that I can climb well, and instead when I get there, I feel like I'm really stiffly moving through things and not feeling as relaxed as I normally do. And I thought about it a lot and realized actually, okay, those expectations that I mentioned before I showed that video, whilst I thought that I'm doing something wrong by not meeting those expectations, the more I thought about it, the more I realized actually I think having those expectations is what's distracting me and making me climb really badly and perform really badly. So I thought a lot about the external expectations that I felt. And this sort of thing I find really, really helpful because, okay, I applied it to before I got up and did this speech. I'm quite nervous about doing this speech, and one of the things I worried about was, okay, everyone's expecting some professional person to come up and talk really, really competently, and what if I stumble over my words, and then everyone judges me because I'm falling short of their expectations? And so, yeah, I think through this sort of stuff a lot, and I realized, well, okay, what's the worst that I imagine someone might say if they're watching me give this speech? And I can imagine some pretty awful stuff, but then when I break it down, I go, well, what would I think of a person who actually thought those things about me? I wouldn't really be that fussed about their opinion. So, okay, those expectations somewhat dispelled. My dad also asked me a really interesting question once when I was talking to him about my struggles with external expectations and competitions, and he asked a very simple question of, why do you think people have high expectations of you? And thinking about it, I was like, I guess because I've demonstrated that I am potentially able to meet those expectations, which doesn't need to be a negative thing. That can just be a cool thing. And actually, I felt that was quite a positive thing of going, okay, it's just a demonstration that I am capable of these cool things. Then when it came to my own expectations, I realized that was often the one that was tripping me up even more than the external expectations. Me putting this pressure on myself of going, okay, I'm going to this competition. If I don't make the finals, or if I don't make the podium, I'm going to be really, really upset with myself. That meant as soon as I made a mistake on one climb and I could see other people doing better than me, everything fell apart. It felt like my plans for the whole competition were completely wrong. I was never going to match the expectations that I'd set myself, so would pretty much give up, or at least become very distracted by what felt like my failure early on in the competition. So I've now learned that actually, if I set performance-based expectations rather than results-based expectations, it's much, much harder to fail that. So instead of setting expectations like, I want to win the competition, or I want to do all of the climbs on my first go, I'll instead set expectations like, I want to try really, really hard. I want to try my best to be really, really focused, even though there's going to be lots of pressure. I might even set reality-based expectations where I go, I think there's going to be a moment where I'm going to try my best, but I'm going to fall off a climb anyway, and it's going to be really, really frustrating. And that's part of it. I'm expecting that to happen. So when it does happen in the competition, as it does for almost everyone there, I don't feel distracted by it. It actually feels like everything's going according to plan. And now, although I'm older than I was, I'm actually performing a lot better in competitions and, importantly, enjoying it so much more than I did when I was younger. And this is now something I teach in coaching sessions as well, that actually I think those two things are pretty closely linked. I've appreciated that competitions are sometimes frustrating and emotionally difficult, and expecting them to feel that way and choosing to enjoy it anyway means I relax, I perform better than I have before, and I enjoy all of my time at competitions. I think I've rattled through my speech faster than I meant to, so we've got plenty of time for questions now. The general gist of what I was talking about was that learning is physically, emotionally, and socially painful, but there are specific strategies that we can use to help us get through those experiences. If we want to learn something and we're appreciating that it's probably going to be a slightly painful experience in some ways, accepting that and choosing to be really optimistic and persistent and carry on going through that process means you will eventually get that payoff at the end of learning something cool. And you can learn some pretty cool things. You can learn climbing, you can apply it to lots of other stuff as well. I've learned all of this through the context of my experience climbing, but I now try and apply it to other areas of my life as well. So there we go, folks. I hope you liked the speech. If anyone's got any questions, now's the time. Thank you, everybody.
That was awesome, truly. I think my first question for you is, for a lot of us who embark on new hobbies and journeys, we don't go from struggling to then representing our country for doing that. So I was kind of curious, what were some of the elements that really guided you through from that moment when you were 13 and it was really just like a personally vulnerable situation to representing Great Britain in bouldering? Can you tell us a little bit more about how you really pushed yourself to get through those harder moments?
Yeah, great question. Okay, when it comes to climbing, I think I've got a few specific advantages. I'm not very tall, but I have freakishly long arms. I think I'm 5'7" this way and about 6'4" that way. That's helpful. I'm also, I'm wiry, I'm stronger than I look. Those things are really, really helpful for climbing, but actually I think the thing that helped me the most is the optimism and persistence that I talked about. I think I've learned it a little bit from my mum. She's very diligently optimistic about things when she's trying something. And then I've also taught myself to do it through climbing, because you're kind of shown again and again that you'll try to climb at a lower level when you're not as experienced, and it feels completely impossible. You instantly doubt that you're strong enough or that you have any of the skills that you need to complete it, and you just carry on trying it, and you slowly learn a little bit more each time, and eventually you then complete something which felt impossible at the start. And then you try something else and you go, oh, this feels impossible, but oh, the last thing also felt impossible, and I did that one, so I'll just confidently keep going through this process. I think the thing that I've excelled at more is I thoroughly enjoy just the process of climbing, falling off, having a really fun time. So my motivation to just go to the climbing gym every day, all day, was really, really, really high. So that made it easier to slowly progress. I never had any particular goals of, oh, I want to reach this level, I want to compete for the national team. I just wanted to be better at it, and I enjoyed getting better at it, so I carried on going. The other one that I think, I meant to talk about at the start, but I didn't bring it up. Before I started climbing, I still am sometimes, incredibly introverted, really, really shy. The idea of getting up and speaking in front of people is not something I would ever have done. I stayed in my room, and I played video games, and I read books. I didn't have many friends. And then I went climbing for the first time, and suddenly there was just this easy medium to talk to other people. We'd be trying the same climbs. They were slightly better than me. I could ask them for advice. We'd talk about it a little bit. And then with climbing, you also teach yourself to be more self-confident, and you get stronger. And slowly, it's helped me become this person who can now stand up and give a speech to people, which I'm also really, really grateful for. So aside from enjoying it, I also realized how much it was just bettering me as a person. And I really enjoyed that process, so I just kept going the whole time. And then there we are. We just do that for 15 years, I suppose.
We want to join my local climbing gym. Want to open up to the floor? Yes, let's go.
Hi, thank you for the sharing. I really enjoyed this. And I've tried bouldering before. It's really hard, so it's not for me. I'm more a dancing girl. My question would be, actually, I think in the previous question you have answered, you have touched base already.
Oh, yeah.
But I want to hear more and how you, what's keep you really going, like in long term, and also in that very split moment of when you fell down, it's really painful. And how can you tune your mindsets like, okay, keep going? Because sometimes it's really just like frustration, pure frustration that you just want to explode.
Yeah.
And I think we have all experienced that as well, like in some form or some shape. And so how can you keep going? Because sometimes it's just, I want to quit. So long.
So, okay, that optimism of just, I assume I'll be better at it if I try it again, that always helps me quite a lot. And just enjoying the process has also helped me a lot. Actually, I think I've learned more about how to deal with failure and how to explain it to other people from my work as a coach. I've been teaching other people to climb for about 10 years or so. And actually, the main thing I notice when I'm teaching people, it's not that they're not strong enough to do harder climbs than they want to, or they're not skilled enough. It's much more common that they try something, or actually, a lot of the time, they don't even try it at all. They assume, they'll look at something and go, oh, I'm not able to do that. And it will take a lot of convincing for me to get them to even try it. Then they'll try it once and go, it's impossible. Like, there's no point in me carrying on at all. And then if I manage to convince them to carry on still, for a lot of people, a threshold of about 6 or 7 tries, they're like, okay, I'm really frustrated just falling off this again and again. Let's go and do something else. So the main thing I've seen is that doubt and frustration are the main barriers to people learning something. There are a couple of things that I'd often talk about in coaching sessions. One of them is the idea that you learn to be more confident as you overcome more and more challenges. It's just a natural process. Like I talked about that idea of when I try an impossible feeling climb, I'm able to call back onto previous experiences going, oh, well, I've tried other ones that felt similarly impossible, and I managed to do those as well. So that works. The main thing I focus on in my lessons, though, is getting people to adjust the language that they use. It sounds like a really, really small change, but this is actually the main one that I've done for years, which has had a huge impact on my climbing. Very carefully choosing the words that I use when I'm talking about myself, when I'm talking about my efforts on a climb, and specifically my inner monologue that's talking to me all the time. This is one that I think is really easily applied to other areas. So an example of how I used to deal with frustration would be that I would fall off a climb and my inner monologue, as I think it would for a lot of other people, would berate me quite strongly. I'd fall off the climb, and in my head I'd be going, "You idiot, Louis, come on, what are you doing? Just grab that hold, like there, you know where it goes. You fell off it again. I can't believe how stupid you are." And then I thought about it, and I was like, oh, if I said that to a student in a lesson, yeah, I'd get fired. They wouldn't book me for another lesson. And then I was like, okay, well, yeah, the reason I wouldn't say that to a student is because it would make them feel really unconfident. It would make them feel probably a bit more frustrated. They probably wouldn't want to try it again. So I wonder what the effect of me saying that to myself all the time is. This is, sorry, a longer answer than I needed to give, but I'll carry on going for a bit longer. The strategy I went for is imagining that my inner monologue talking to me was a person next to me following me around the climbing gym. As soon as I did that, I realized, oh, I think this person's trying to help, but they're really mean, and they're actually not helping. They're putting me off a lot. So I viewed it as a constant task of retraining them to speak to me in a different way. And it's been a couple of years slowly practicing it, but now when I fall off a climb, instead of my inner monologue yelling at me and telling me I'm an idiot, he says, oh, nice try. Okay, that went really well. What about this? Maybe we could try that thing instead. And it's like having a coach next to me actually supporting me. In my coaching sessions, I'm often making sure I'm doing that with students. So when they fall off something and they start saying, oh, I feel really stupid, that was such a stupid mistake to make, I'll talk about how that language is often not helping them. And I'm gently trying to coax them into the idea that adjusting how they speak to themselves is one of the main ways of overcoming frustration and self-doubt and things like that. Okay, I think that was my whole answer. Thank you, that was a really good question.
Good morning, Louis. Thank you for the fabulous presentation. I'm a marathon runner as well.
Oh, wow.
This year, I did New York City, and I also did, thank you, Valencia last weekend as well.
Oh, man.
My first question is like, when you were like in the GB team, how did you cope with like the peer pressures? Because like your teammates, your friends may did like better than you. So how did you like cope with the pressure? Second is like, I don't know who the champion is like for climbing, but like for running, for example, I can never be like Usain Bolt. Like, so when you like try to achieve the like targets or like try to test the limit, how can you like like manage the pressure? How to like try to achieve like your limits? Like,
good question. So okay, so when I was younger and I did the World Cups, I don't think I was very good at managing pressure. And although I was physically strong enough to do the climbs in front of me, I think I did my first ever climb that I came across in a World Cup, and then I didn't manage to do any others. I constantly made mistakes. You're on a quite short time limit. You're trying a climb that you've not worked out before, and working out all the subtleties and completing it is quite difficult. The main thing that I've noticed in hindsight that experienced competition climbers talk about is their ability to just enjoy the climbs despite all the pressure they're under. We had climbing being included in the Olympics for the first time in 2020, and the woman who won it mostly spoke about this idea of, oh, I was under loads and loads of pressure, and it was the hardest time I had just focusing on enjoying the climbs and ignoring all the pressure around me. And I think it then goes back to the idea of if you're not distracted by all this other stuff going on around you, you can just relax, enjoy what you're doing, and that frees up a much better level of performance. When I was younger, I didn't do any of that stuff. I would be on the mats, under a time limit, trying to do this climb in front of me, and all I'd think about was the results of the competition, how I must be looking to all these other people. I was thinking about 1,000 other things other than just doing the climb in front of me. And so as a result, I just didn't manage to do the climb in front of me. Now I look back on it realizing, okay, more successful competitors are more successful because they are just relaxing and enjoying what they're doing. So I focused on doing that more. And now actually I look back in hindsight at a lot of the competitions that I've done and realized, I'm going to look back when I'm older, when I'm too old to do any competitions or climb at all, and there'll be lots of experiences that I might look at going, I was in a beautiful part of the world with some really lovely people doing this really cool competition. As an old man, I'd give anything just to be back there, just experiencing it again. Because I now look back on it going, young Louis was an idiot. He spent the whole time there really anxious and really frustrated. Not only did I not do well in that competition, but I also didn't enjoy a single second of it. So now one of the main reasons I focus so much on just enjoying my time at competitions is that often it means I do perform better and I get a result that I'm quite happy with. But what's also nice is if I don't get a result that I'm happy with, instead of leaving from that weekend going, a waste of time. I just spent the whole time angry and really upset about doing badly, and it really feels like a waste of my weekend. Instead, I'd leave the competition going, oh, I didn't do well, but whoa, what a great time I had. I saw all my friends, I did this really fun climb, it was really exciting with all the music and the lights for the competition, and it just feels like a much more, worthwhile experience. Then when you're saying this point of like, oh, well, how am I'm not ever going to be as good as, the people winning the Olympics. Like I say, I still do competitions now, but for fun. I'm not planning on winning anything. It would be nice if I did, and don't get me wrong, I'm still competitive and I'd like to win. But I keep in mind that if I'm always chasing this idea of like, no, I want to be better than I am, then I never enjoy where I am at the moment. And if I'm never ever going to actually get to this insane level that I have as this perfect ideal, then I'm just going to never enjoy what I'm doing. So taking the time to actually stop and enjoy where I'm at and what I'm actually doing at the time means I experience it better, and I probably do it better at the time as well. Does that answer your question? Oh, yeah, okay, great.
Thank you. First of all, I love your positivity. I think you're brave and a bit crazy all the time.
Yeah, definitely.
But my question really is around, so you coach other folks, and you obviously analyze what you do, you kind of self-coach and look at what you do, but do coaches need coaching? Do you have someone who coaches you? Is that something you've had through your career? Do you need a coach now to say, actually, what you're thinking different, or to help you know your limits? Because you've got some very on-the-edge type limits of what is acceptable. So does someone, apart from your inner monologue, do you have someone outside of that saying to you, actually, do it differently?
So I've got a lot of friends and a lot of influencers who I talk to a lot. Actually, that video of me falling off that climb on a rope with the other guy holding the other end of it, he is the person who coached me a lot when I was younger. I don't have anyone who directly coaches me now, because actually I view my competition and climbing performance as actually only a small part of my career. When I was younger, it was all I did. Now I've got a business that I run, I've got a load of YouTube stuff that I do. If I only did climbing, then I would have a coach who is training me to be better. And I don't think there are any top-level climbers nowadays who don't have a coach alongside them helping with this stuff. Instead, for me, I spend most of my time I know most of the British team. I'll talk to them about the competitions that we did. I find I get a lot of insight just talking to them about what they did well. I get to climb with them a lot. So I don't have anyone who's directly responsible for my performance. I would quite like it if I did. But for now, I'm not as focused on it. So yeah, it probably would be helpful, but not at the moment. Oh, thank you.
I think we have time for one or two more questions. Oh, I'll get to you guys next.
Thank you. Hi, my name's Gavin. Thank you for
Hey,
the
Gavin.
talk. I really enjoyed the fact that you didn't just talk about your successes, you talked about your failures as well. And it's that failure that I'd like to ask you about. You mentioned that you never won the Olympics, but you've represented Team GB, which is a really high level of performance. And I often find that when people talk about failure, they do it from the perspective of having run the gauntlet and been successful. I wonder, when you were running the gauntlet, before you had that validation of representing Team GB, were you still able to talk so openly and freely about your failures, and did that feel slightly different?
Good question. I think when I was younger, although I was probably physically stronger than I am now, which is how I performed well, I think my approach to failure was nowhere near as mature, I suppose it is now. I used to get far more frustrated. I didn't perform well in competitions. I made it onto the GB team and competed at the World Cups despite that. But at the time, no, don't think I was very good at dealing with failure. I battled on through mostly using stubbornness rather than optimism, and still enjoyed the process, but was often getting quite frustrated about it and carrying on anyway. Sorry, remind me where the question started. We were talking about whether or not I've always been good at talking about this stuff. Oh, sorry, we're talking about, validation of being on the GB team. So, I think I'm more experienced to deal with frustration and failure nowadays because I've experienced it for longer and I've got more self-confidence from it. When I was younger, I remember that actually, being invited to join the GB team was a really, really big moment for me. I'd been climbing for 10 years. I'd seen people wearing their GB team vests and always idolized it and really wanted that as well. And when I got invited to the GB team, it felt like this huge validation of, recognition. Someone's seen that I'm actually good at it. I've practiced it for ages. I feel really, really validated. And then I competed at the World Cups. I didn't do as well as they'd hoped. And a few years later, I got booted off the team again, which in terms of like validation of my skills did not feel that great. It suddenly felt like, I thought I was a really, really good climber. Now I'm off the GB team again, feeling pretty bad about my performance. It feels like I've been kind of told that I'm not as good as I or other people thought I was. And that made me think a lot about where I get validation from and where I get self-worth from. So it's now something I'm also very careful not to do, is tying my self-worth to individual snapshots of performance or results in competitions, because those vary a lot. Sometimes you turn up and you win a competition, you feel amazing, and then you go to the next competition and you lose by a mile. And it's taken a while to almost steel myself to this idea of experiences change, but I remain the same. One competition result doesn't immediately change my value, but it used to. When I was younger, I'd have one competition result and then immediately fall apart, whereas now I'm a lot better about realizing, it's just a result of a competition. So no, generally I'd say when I was younger, I was not very good at dealing with failure or frustration, and I've become a lot better at it through having to deal with it a lot over the years. I'll get it to you after.
Thank you for such a great talk, and thank you for the optimistic content that you put on YouTube. Do you think there's going to be a point where you're not going to experience enough pain from bouldering anymore? And what other sport are you going to?
I'm not sure if I'm ever going to stop enjoying climbing as much as I do. One thing I might change, though, is just the exact discipline of climbing that I do. So I'm only currently doing the discipline which involves the highest amount of strength and flexibility, a lot of falling off. Probably the most physically painful version of climbing. Recently, I went on a trip for a friend's birthday where we were climbing with ropes, we were on sea cliffs by the coast. The climbing we were doing was, by comparison to what I normally do, really, really easy. All the holds are loads better, it's a lot less overhanging. It suddenly made me realize that, actually, now that I'm not just focusing on the pure difficulty of what I'm doing, I get to experience like, oh, wow, look at the nice view, and it's quite exciting that it's a lot higher than I normally do. It felt a lot more adventurous, and I got a completely different experience from climbing, with it still being some of the skills that I'd used, but at a much lower physical intensity. And so now I'm kind of looking forward to being a bit too old to do the type of climbing I do now, and going, I can just do easy, adventurous climbing and enjoy being outdoors a little bit more and not worry about just falling off the same thing over and over again. So I might change the discipline of climbing that I do. Aside from that, I do like doing other sports, but none of them quite as much as climbing. It's a really good mix of fun stuff. Physical challenge, like tactical challenges. Sometimes it's scary and exciting as well. It gives me a lot. There was one more fellow who I think had a question over there. Oh, okay. Hi.
Hi, I'm Effie. I am a new climber. I started in the beginning of this year.
No way.
I just purely have some question on how to get over, when you go for climb and there's a route you really want to get it done, and you feel like as if you don't get it done, your day hasn't been completed. Yeah. And I usually have two options. Either I fail on them a few times and I am reluctant to go back to them and I feel like I failed the day, or I go back to them time and time again. And if I crash it, I feel like I completed. If I don't, then it's as if I didn't get enough out of the climb. I felt like both options are ideal to maximize my joy in this process. Maybe you have answered that already, but
no, it's a really good question.
Any good advice on that?
So, okay, it's something, again, that I've slowly learned to be more experienced with in my time climbing. Same as you, when I was younger, I'd be trying a climb, either sometimes being distracted by the feeling of frustration that I felt like I wasn't going to be able to do it. Like if I was trying it and thinking, oh no, last time I had a go at it, I actually felt loads stronger. Today I feel really weak, I've forgotten how to do the moves. Oh, I'm all disappointed, it feels like I'm not going to be able to do this. That just distracted me from climbing well and meant it was harder for me to do the climb. And then likewise, sometimes I would suddenly get past the hardest move and I'd get really, really excited about the idea that I was about to finish it, and I got so excited that I made a mistake and fell off. And mostly what I saw is being really focused on the end goal just distracts me from the process. And I then thought about it more, realizing, well, why is it important if I finish this climb or not? Because you can possibly tell from watching, the sport that I do is pretty pointless. It's a really silly thing to be doing. I just fall off over and over again. If I wanted to get to the top of the rock, there are much easier ways. You can walk around the back and things like that. So yeah, realizing that, okay, climbing itself is pretty pointless, and if I'm now attaching loads and loads of meaning and getting really frustrated by the idea of falling off the same climb over and over again, well, I'm probably making the whole experience a bit less enjoyable, and I'm making it harder to actually achieve this thing. So I thought about it and realized, okay, no, there are specific occasions, like if I'm at a competition or if I've gone on a trip outdoors to go and climb a specific climb that's been on my list for ages, then yeah, it is important that I finish the climb from start to finish. That's the goal that I've set for myself. When I'm just in the climbing gym, like 99% of the time, just trying different climbs that they've put up, I really intentionally remind myself that actually finishing it is not important. Just trying it and going through the trial and error process will make me better at solving problems. And whether I get the climb or not, it doesn't actually really matter. I'm sure there's thousands of climbs over my last 2 decades of climbing where if you'd asked me at the moment, Louis, how much do you care about doing this climb? I would have said it was the most important thing in my life. I'm not leaving until I finish it. I'm so obsessed with this climb. And now, a few years later, I don't remember if I finished it or not. I don't remember what the climb was. So overall, I'm now settled into the idea of I'm just going to try stuff and make progress and focus on learning and enjoying things. Sometimes it will end with me succeeding and finishing this hard climb that I wanted to do. And a lot of the time it won't. But if it was going to end in an unsuccessful experience, me stressing and raging, getting really frustrated, wouldn't have made it more successful. So I now view it as either I can just focus on enjoying myself and perform well, and sometimes that will end in success and sometimes it won't, or I can get really frustrated all the time, and I'm probably just going to have less success and enjoy all of it a lot less. So for your climbing sessions, I'd say don't worry about doing the climb or not. Just focus on enjoying trying really hard and learning some cool stuff. And you'll get better at trying hard and learning stuff, and those things will mean you can do harder and harder climbs later. You're welcome.
Perfect. If we can give Louis another round of applause. Yes! Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.
You're the best. So we're going to do community minutes.